Welcome to another episode of Where Are They Now, the show in which we catch up with Carrot Poker School graduates, people that have taken grade 1, grade 2, grade E, a mix of courses, or maybe done the full scholarship education that you can find at carrotcorner.com, and check in with them, see what the results are like, talk over hands with them. Today's student is a chap called Kevin, someone I used to stream with back in the day, and someone who really made a great effort in becoming a part of our Discord community and has been very active on there discussing hands with people for quite some time. We're going to check in with him and see if his game has improved. Hope you guys enjoy, and don't forget to check out Carrot Corner after the video. Take the same path in your poker education as Kevin has in his. Let's get to the video. All right, we are here with Kevin, whom I know from some old streaming days. You used to come on my stream really early on a Monday morning, I believe it was, because I was always like, oh man, the weekend's over. I've got to do work again. And then there was you. So I've got that Monday morning feeling right now, even though it's a Wednesday afternoon. But how's it been going, man?
Yeah, first, thanks for having me, Pete. Yeah, it's quite good recently, poker-wise and in terms of everything else, so can't complain. Yeah.
Good to hear it. So we always start Where Are They Now with a graph. And sometimes there are sudden changes in the graph, and people tune in and think, oh, this must be like where the Carrot Poker School students started doing the Carrot Poker School. But it's not always the case, because I think we started the Carrot Poker School sometime before this spike here. And, well, there's a few factors involved with a spike like this. Like, any time when things dramatically shoot up like this after 95,000 hands of losing, there's going to be variance involved, right? So that's got to be one factor. Also, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but you switched sites and you started not paying extra German rake tax, as I understand it, right? Which is a great thing. And you also started grade E of the Carrot Poker School, which is the exploitative grade. I think you got the full scholarship grades 1, 2, 3, and E. You can check that out at Carrot Corner, guys. All the videos are on site, so once you bought it, you can watch all of them. So something like 43 videos. So needless to say, it took you a while to start making your way through grades 1 and 2. I don't think you've done grade 3 yet, right? You're just up to grade 2.
I started with grade 3, like lecture 1, but for now I focus more on the exploitative side of the game, so I will save this content for later.
Yeah, so the general agreement in our Discord server is that the optimal strategy is to do grade 1 and grade 2 and then mix in grade E sometime while you're doing grade 2, rather than going to like grade 3 and doing like all of the theory, because grade 3 gets quite complex, and I would say it's higher hanging fruit than grade E, which is more like, oh my god, that's so profitable, I didn't realize that, sort of grab it. So, okay, cool. So everything's really turned around for you recently. Paying less rake, amazing thing. Definitely something that you need to look for, guys. Like, especially if you're in Germany. Do you want to talk really quickly about what the situation actually is for German players at the moment and how you got around this?
Yeah, sure. So we have 4 regulated sites in Germany. Because of the German law, they bring in a law in 2021 where sites have to pay taxes to the state, basically, and the sites decided to put them on the rake for the German players. So on GG Poker, on PokerStars, and on 888, in cash games we pay 6% or even more. On PokerStars is 6.25 in micro and low stakes. And this equals in like 1.5 to 2 BB per 100 extra rake. So, and to beat this, you have to be better than the average rake in the pool. So if you're break even, you're basically winning by 2 BBs. And then I found Party Poker. It's also a regulated site in Germany, but they only rake tournaments more and not cash games. So this was my first address to play. And other than that, I now started playing on sites that are not regulated in Germany. For
Mhm.
example, Bet Online, which is from the Chico Poker network, and Coin Poker. And
Okay.
now I'm mixing those three sites basically.
Okay, cool. And this graph here, is this just your party volume, I think, or was this other stuff
Uh,
too?
this is Party and Coin Poker, and before that it was basically only GG Poker because in this year I didn't play that much volume on Stars or 888.
Okay. Yeah, so the GG poker graph is pretty typical of a lot of GG poker graphs that I see, especially for German players where it's even worse. It's like so few people are winning on GG because the rake is just higher in general. And then we add into the mix, you've got this extra money to pay. It's just absolutely wild. Like such a hostile poker environment. It's like trying to survive on Neptune or something like that as a human, you know, like being cast into some foreign planet with terrible atmosphere and no oxygen, and then somehow you're meant to breathe. So it doesn't really work. But obviously, this upswing can't just be the result of 2 BB per 100, you know,
Yes.
increase in money kept in rake. So what else is going on here? You mentioned grade E. Did you feel like grade E was the biggest turning point in your poker study? And if you felt that, like, what was it about that course that you felt like changed your game so much?
Um, at first glance, I have to say, grade E is obviously. I think grade E is the most important course because it's very important to have a theoretical background for the game and to know where to deviate from GTO when you see an exploit. But without grade E, it's really hard to see the low hanging fruits, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also that only looking at grade E is not the full picture of it, but to really work with the data and to going into hand reviews, into database researches, and look for spots where you missed some EV by not betting here, not calling down here. Yeah, that's something you get into that process after watching grade E and that's why this graph. So this is this whole graph is like beginning of grade E to now, and the first, yeah, like I don't know, 90k hands. It's like, yeah, I've done grade E, but I didn't implement those concepts into my game. It's further work,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I really want to stress out that it's not only watching the videos because this is like the theoretical courses. It's really in an academic style, so you really have to engage with the content and you really have to work with it, and then I think it's paying out.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's way too easy to just learn entertainment, watch a course as if it's a YouTube video, switch off and chill, and not force yourself to apply it. And you know, if you do that, I think you're probably applying single digit percentages of everything that's actually in the course. You're applying like 7% of it or something. And you can do way better. You're never going to apply everything in a course because you're not like a supercomputer, but if you work at it, revise, review hands, talk with other humans, that sort of thing really, really helps, I think. So I'd advise anyone who's taking the Carrot Poker School to chat in our Discord about it, post hands, make videos of yourself playing, do calls, sweat calls with other players that are doing the same content, all of this stuff.
Great
All right,
study groups,
study
very
groups are
important.
key. Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, we can see things are going a lot better now. I think switching a site was an amazing thing to do, something you probably, you know, wish you'd done sooner. But yeah, a lesson to everyone out there that playing a certain site just because it's there and it's easy isn't necessarily the answer. Do some research, really think about it, try and speak to as many people as you can, and try and come to an informed decision about where you want to play, because that is part of the battle after all. Okay, we've got some hands here. So without any further ado, I don't want to keep the audience waiting for their poker fix any longer. So let's get into a few spots here.
Yes.
And I reviewed your game. This is a coaching call, right? Where are they now? As a coaching series. It's like, okay, cool, you got the school, you've been working through it, but how do we like really take your game to the next level? And I think looking through your game, Kevin, the thing that jumped out at me the most was the amount of unnecessary losses, perhaps in big pots. And I've highlighted a few big pots today, some of which I think are fine and some of which are not fine. So this might have a bit of a punt or no punt kind of vibe to it. Only we won't be calling anyone a disgusting pig. Shout out to Easty. Well, we might. We'll see what they do first. We'll see how stainy they are. But we have the Queen 9 in the big blind here, and we decide to call and open from the button, which is obviously very close and can be fine with skill edge and all of that. And the flop is 9-6 deuce, and villain goes for a big c-bet. And we call. This is a 100 NL hand, by the way, for anyone that's wondering. The King of Diamonds comes on the turn. and villain decides to overbet, and again we call. The river is an ace, villain goes for 3/4 pot, and again we call. So I don't want you to jump to a conclusion that I'm criticizing this hand and try to defend it, or try to, like, what some students do is they expect the criticisms coming, so they just automatically assume their play is bad and they try and, like, beat the shit out of their play. I don't want you to do that. I want you to be super objective here, because this may or may not be one of the hands I have a problem with. Right, so let's start with the turn here. Many thoughts here? How close do you think you are to being indifferent? What do you think's going on with ranges here?
Yeah, I think so. Starting by flop, he's using a big bet strategy, which is obviously standard on the spot. So in theory, he's more polar for his whole range. This card is great for his range. Yeah, gaining a lot of new top pairs that we didn't have. Yeah, and speaking of sizing, only in theory, I think this is a sizing that you don't want to use in theory. But I'm not quite sure. I think this B75 would be more common. I remember this hand because it's like 1 week ago, I would say, or 2 weeks. And I really focused lately on board textures and over bluffing, under bluffing nodes. And I think the low board and high turn card and high river card are more over bluffed, and that's the reason why I decided to call here. I think in theory our hand is close and different.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's absolutely right about the turn. I think when there's a gut shot bringing turn, it's very, very easy, especially when you have a button range that contains like Jack 10 offsuit, Queen 10 offsuit, the stuff that you might not have full frequency under the gun. It's very easy to start over bluffing. When someone overbets here, if you're playing like GG 100 Russian cash, which is a pool full of, like, you know, the tightest stains, as Easty would say, imaginable, it might be that, like, they're still just not bluffing enough. But in any pool where you've identified your opponent as like some kind of thinking reg, they've now designated themselves as someone who is capable of overbet aggression, and there's very few regs out there that are capable of overbetting but don't overbet as a bluff, or like really, you know, value heavy in this spot. So yeah, I think theory wise you can have this in your game. Like your best king X, your aces, your 2 pair plus can do this. I do think as well though B75 is going to be a common line because you have a lot of tens, jacks, ace 9, weak king that doesn't want to overbet here. So I think you would see both in a solver, but mainly B75 as you say. But I don't think this is like a mistaken principle. And then when we go ahead and call here, I think we're taking a hand that has a quote unquote like semi-negative blocker or something. It's probably mixing fold in game theory. Probably there are other 9x here that we do call. I do think this is probably mostly a call actually to this size of overbet. But it'll be very close to break even. And then the ace river looks like it hits villain, but like what new value hands does he really gain here unless he's bluffing ace 2 suited? There's ace king obviously, but that's already beating us. I don't see a lot of new hands that beat us on the river, and we're now getting better pot odds. And I agree with you that when it's a triple barrel, crucially from late position, right? It's a key grade E concept where ranges are wide. It's going to get overbluffed, particularly when there are multiple missed offsuit broadways in range, because it just creates this landing range that's full of bluffable hands, and that can lead to overbluffing. So I love this call down. Absolutely love to see it. Unfortunately, you ran into like some kind of, I don't know, sicko or over polarizer maybe, or a guy that's going for like the greediest. Oh no, this is 2 pair. I thought it was 1 pair.
Yeah,
this is 2 pair. Yeah, fair enough then. So we ran into a normal river value bet. I thought he'd done this with just king 6, and I was like, how did this happen? When I first looked at this hand.
It happens from time to time. So one thing I want to add on this hand, when he sizes down on the river, this is like kind of danger zone, I would say, because sizing up and then sizing down seems to be or is definitely underbluffed. But I was still wondering, and I use this line as an exploit to bluff more often now, because I think this is a pattern that regs know nowadays, and they know this is underbluffed. But I was wondering, there are not that many combos that make total sense to me. So maybe ace X of clubs that now going for a bet, or something like king 6. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's almost like if villain had a good enough hand to be value betting this ace river, he would usually be shoving or over betting again with a set or ace king or something like that. So it's a bit of a suspicious sizing in that sense. But you're right, the general pattern is that when people go big, small, or bigger, smaller, and my favorite of all time from grade E, when I was making that, was the data that we found on B75 block bet, like that line. and it's like bluffed 14% of the
Yeah,
time or 12% of the time or something.
tremendously
It's like
underbluffed.
hyper underbluffed, yeah, which is really funny. So using that against regs that you think are informed is interesting. Obviously, we want to be careful that we don't over project onto the wrong player when we're doing
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I like this call down. This is definitely winning. I would think. Okay, Ace 10 now. We open, we get called by the big blind. We have Ace King 6, and we go for an overbet on the flop. So the flop overbet strategy, a little bit niche, a little bit funky. What are your thoughts here?
Actually, I was trying to implement this lately in my game as well. But also, to be honest, this is definitely a league of mine. I try to implement some concepts which like overbetting flop, and I think this board is good for doing this because villain is lacking in two pair combos. He has some king six and some ace six, but we have definitely the monopoly on two pairs and sets, and therefore going uh really start to polarize on this texture. Um, I think servers doing this more often on two-tone boards, but yeah, this is just a side note. But the league where I'm talking about is I started to see this pattern on flop, but I never looked into turn or river strategies after that. So
Hmm.
this is something I have to do this before I start to implement the strategy. But yeah, that's the reason why I
Maybe depends how orderly you want to be. Like I can see my poker game as a temple. I need it to be in order above. Like my order is more important than my opponent's chaos, shall we say, or something like that. The other line here would be to say, well, actually, if I have no idea what's going on after overbet flop, nobody else does either, and I'm going to figure it out better than them, and I'm going to work on it while I'm doing it and get better at it, and then sim it tomorrow instead of saying I have to have simmed it yesterday. So I think that's still okay to do this, and just it might even inspire you to curiously look into it more. I think the board is fine for it, obviously for the reasons you outlined. I think doing this for value is especially good because people are probably going to be over defending. Like I think there's some king x combos here that become folds or become indifferent, like king with gut shot blocker becomes like a fold here and stuff like that. And yeah, this might actually be slightly over continued. You could go for a bigger overbet if you want to use an overbet and you're value betting and you're not worried about transparency. You can even go larger when you have like maybe with a bigger hand than this, when you have ace queen plus or something, you could probably even go bigger. But yeah, I think it's fine. Turn, yeah, so I think your hand is huge here. You could just take the line that you want to bet three streets, or you could take the line that you want to check this one back and allow villain to bluff some rivers and just go for your second street on river. You got a preference here?
Actually, I was thinking about sizing first, and I was unsure what sizing I want to use on this turn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think my main sizing would be still overbet. And then for that, I thought ace 10 is not good enough to overbet.
Okay.
And I started to check this back.
Yeah, so I kind of agree that if I was going to bet the turn, I wouldn't overbet. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, well, my GTO understanding is that if I'm playing one bet, it's overbet only because I have more big ace X and I have more two pair plus now, and villain has more just like bad trips in king X. I think that makes sense. But that's not to say that it isn't also a viable line to bet smaller with a hand like ace 10 or whatever. Like villain doesn't know that your only line here is overbet, right? For example.
Exactly.
So if you figured that it was higher EV to value bet three times here than not, then you should probably just bet. And if I am against a weaker player here, I think there is some ace jack that we're a bit worried about, but there's not really much else that we lose to, right? For the reasons we gave on the flop, like king six no longer beats us, right? We've just moved ahead of king six.
Yeah.
Sixes is very likely to raise flop. Ace six is quite likely to raise flop. So against a weaker player, passive player, someone that's not going to know that they need to bluff Jack 10 on the river, I'm going to bet the turn against that person every single time. And against someone stronger, I'm not sure what's best, and I can get behind your line of checking for sure.
Because you dive into the player type, I actually now use the rake color system from lecture 10 with alpha and beta rake.
Mm-hmm.
And I marked this guy as an alpha rake already before this hand. So I think this is one of the better rakes in the pool, or one of the best rakes in the pool.
Yeah, so what I do is I find them on like Facebook and I see if I think they could beat me up, and if I think they can, I call them an alpha reg, and if not, I call them a beta reg and I mark them. So yeah, I think that's fine. Now, a good reg here is obviously the opposite of what most people are going to be playing against, because alpha regs are by definition like the minority of the pool, right? So we do have to
Yeah.
switch into a different gear when we make that diagnosis. So he blocks the river. What range do you think this player has now? What sort of hands are we seeing here?
Mm, yeah, definitely King X, good King X. I would say like something like King 10 plus.
Now remember, you've overbet the flop, so if
Uh,
he's actually alpha, can he value bet King 10 against the range that overbet the flop?
for quarter, I don't know what the equity of King 10 is after.
Well, the problem is that you're too polarized, right? So it's not about the equity. Like the hand has enough
Yeah,
equity,
yeah, good
like
point.
technically, but it only has enough equity because you have so much air. It
Mm,
doesn't have equity because it can value bet. So when you range bet the flop here and then check back, your range
yeah,
has
yeah,
jacks and queens and 6x and bad king. But when you overbet the flop, you're kind of polling out to like king queen minimum. I think there's like some weird king queen that does that in the solver, but it's really rare. It's low
yeah,
frequency.
yeah,
The rest is like decent ace plus, right? So
yeah,
then he just can't bet a king. He has to check a king against this overbet. This might be what you're saying, where once you've studied the overbet line a bit more, these things will be more obvious and you'll
yeah,
play the later game tree a bit better. But yeah, I think ace x plus for value here should be his
yeah,
range if
sure,
he's a
yeah,
good
yeah,
rig.
SX
Yep.
plus for sure.
Yep. Okay, so we raise because we do beat most ace x, and I don't think people will put too many great hands in here, and then
Yeah,
villain jams, and it's like such a headache spot. 'Cause it's like, well, he knows I'm kind of capped when I check back the turn, and then like I can never have the absolute nuts, but he could have
yeah,
a6, and then is he just like ripping some, I don't know, bluff here? But then once we've made the realization that his value range shouldn't actually contain a king, it's like, what the hell is the bluff candidate now? Like it's
yeah,
air, like Jack 10, or it's like an ace. It's like trip aces being turned into a bluff. So I would just ask you here to try to weigh up the prospect of anybody bluffing the spot and like who they would need to be and like how likely it is, and weigh that up against the fact that yeah, there really aren't that many value combos here. There's really just pocket sixes, ace six, ace three, or something. So yeah, what do you think?
yeah. So yeah, my first instinct was if this is not a red tagged guy in my pool, I would just fold here without
Yep.
any further ado. Um, yeah, that being said, with that player type, and exactly, he knows that I'm kind of capped on the turn, and yeah, I only got now S3 as value, as new value here. Um, yeah, I was kind of suspicious what he's up to now, and I also think that pocket sixes are not shoving this river, or not shoving at all here, because yeah, we have some boats here with ace king. Sometimes we still play ace king. Sometimes we hit on with ace three. So I
Mhm.
don't think sixes are in here that at least not 100% of the time by not raising flop and not taking this line on the river.
Mhm.
Mm, so it's basically ace three suited, ace three and ace six. Some ace three of my three bet. So it's not total. It's not pure. So yeah, it's. But on the other side, for us winning 36% of the time, he has to find bluffs 36% of the time. And I looked the spot up in the solver, and I also my first instinct was he has to turn weak ace X into a bluff.
Mhm.
Because he
Yep.
wants to block boats from us.
Yep.
And yeah, I wasn't sure if he's capable of doing this, but if someone is capable, then a red tag guy, because I think I tagged like 3 guys in this pool red,
Yeah.
is capable of. So that's the reason why I finally also decided to call here.
Yeah. It might be a bit like the following analogy, though. I feel like it's a bit like if any animal on Earth is capable of lifting up Jupiter, then it's a really strong animal like a bear. And it's like, well, yeah, that kind of follows, but obviously a bear can't lift the planet Jupiter, right? So we're
Yeah,
kind of in a situation where, like, yeah, if anyone was going to be over bluffing here, it's probably the red tag guy. But because they don't actually have like the king X, which is like the more natural thing to bluff with, right? Like if they could have, okay, maybe the kind of guy I want to call here against is the guy that isn't actually that good a reg, but is like an aggro, really opportunistic reg. And if he's blocking the river with king X here because he thinks that that's actually a thing, I don't think that is a thing when you've overbet the flop. Then maybe like I'm in the camp where, well, now he might be bluffing enough. But because I kind of agree with you that he either has to just raw bluff like Jack 10 or something, or bluff ace-x here. That's what's making me feel like this was a fold, but I don't know. It is so villain dependent, right? I would just say I would need a very, very, very specific like idea that someone is both like either a real sicko and is like capable of like over bluffing with ace-5 combos and stuff, or is like spewy enough to be like block betting a king and then ripping or something here. But you know what? It might not be too bad against the player type that you outlined, that call. But yeah, bit of a weird one.
Yeah, I was also actually really upset after descent because I set session goals
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, and one of my session goals were like find or when you have a zero EV hand, just fold some of the time, because sometimes I have like jacks in a 4-bet pot, and or I got 4-bet, I don't know, button versus hijack, and yeah, and I'm jamming, and I know this hand can do either way. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I was setting a goal for the session. Was like, yeah, okay, damn.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of arbitrary goal, though. Of course, if you have any idea, like, if you did think at the time, this guy has hardly any value, and he is the type, and he could easily lose control, and I just wouldn't be surprised if he did have it in him to do it with an ace or something, or even wilder to be blocking a king and jamming, or blocking, like Jack 10 and jamming, then fair enough. But,
Yeah,
I think Villain played this really well. I actually really like his play on the river because you're very likely to raise. Humans are very likely to raise trips against that. Even though they maybe shouldn't raise the worst trips, I think they're likely to raise trip aces against that. And obviously, he needs to let you bluff. Sometimes you just have this really polar range, and he's adapted to that by downsizing on the river.
yeah,
And I really, really like his river bet,
yeah.
actually. I think it's really good. Yeah, really unlucky to run into that part of range, though. Okay. Ace jack suited now. We go for the call in the big blind. The flop is jack 3 deuce. Villain goes for near pot. Do you remember the player type here? Because I'm so used to analyzing like zoom hands where people are readless, but you're playing in some smaller pools. So do you know the villain in this hand before I go any further?
Not exactly, but definitely go for the idea that this is a weaker player, not full stacked, potting flop.
Yep.
Yeah,
Definitely. So some form of recreational. We don't
yeah.
know what kind. We check and they check behind, and we do something pretty interesting in the river here. We go for this really, really big value bet. So let's talk about this a little bit, because this is definitely non-standard. Most people watching this would bet smaller here for value, or check. I think check is like not ideal here, but like let's talk about whether this is right or whether smaller would be better and what you were thinking at the time.
Actually, I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but looking at this now, I would say that betting small might be the worst play out of three options, because Villain is capping himself a lot by checking the queen. So he's on the flop. He's saying so even if fish is somewhat polarizing on the flop by potting this jack 3 deuce offsuit. So he's either having some good jack X or jack X in general, or air. So yeah, betting small doesn't seem to be logical for me on the river. And I think my equity in the real world with the sand is something around 80-85%, maybe even more. And therefore, yeah, definitely want to go big here.
Yeah, so we're kind of saying that there aren't many two pair around the 5. Pocket 5s is unlikely to pot the flop. A queen is very unlikely to check the turn, although it could pot the flop. And then villain is, even though we block a jack, the villain is still massively geared towards either nothing or a jack here.
Yeah.
That's the sort of idea. Okay, yeah, so check might have some merit then, and then raise a tiny bit. That might be like the hyper greedy line, see if we can get villain to bluff some air. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really valid point. Instinctively, I'd go smaller, but now that you say it, I do think it's quite rare for a fish to check this queen turn with a queen. There are some other things that uncap on river, like 5-3 suited or ace 4 or something. Maybe ace 4 offsuits quite a lot of combos and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like I'd go a bit smaller on river, but I totally see what you're doing here. You're targeting, there's that word again, the Jack X region, because you think the Jack X region is a massive part of a fish's range for playing this way. The final thing I'd say is, like, don't be shocked if fish do actually do this with like 9s sometimes on the flop. They do just pot it for the hell of it, and then that's a hand that this is also good against. So I'd probably go a bit smaller in real life, but like I can't actually fault this too much. I just think like you do cost yourself extra against the queen, but the fact that villain potted the flop and checked the queen, especially if he checks the queen quickly, definitely makes me think this is a very Jack X laden range, and I think you're doing a really good job of hand reading here. You do run into the Jack 9, you look like a genius. I think the play is a lot better than it looks. I think a lot of your plays are a lot better than they look, and your game has just improved a lot since I last spoke to you. Like, I'm absolutely seeing the theory and the practice coming together now in a way that they weren't when we were doing those morning streams together.
Yeah.
And I was arguing with chat trolls on a Monday morning and, hating my life. So, good times. I don't know why the Monday morning trolls were always the nastiest ones on live chat, but they seem to be. Okay, pocket potatoes. If anyone can tell me why they're called pocket potatoes, you will get nothing. Let's move on. So
I saw Dan trying to trying to solve the puzzle about the pocket potatoes, but yeah.
It's like watching a bunch of children try and solve a 1,000 piece jigsaw puzzle or something. It's like, no, you guys aren't going to do it. Like, it's okay. Just let it go. We love you, really, guys. Don't worry. Some of you actually do know, but I want those of you to stay quiet about it. So potatoes, 3-betting pre, called, over pair of potatoes, B53, because that's GTO kids. Call, king turn, want to be doing a lot of small betting here probably. We go for a small bet. You could even size up to half pot or something here. I think it's fine. I'm a big fan of just betting tens again. I think it's one of the hands that wants to bet again the most in your range. So big fan of this value bet.
Yeah.
And you talked about folding sooner, right? Earlier, you said
yeah.
like, I think my red line might be suffering because I'm not folding soon enough. Could this be a spot where we want to get out of the burning building sooner?
Yeah,
like, what do you think?
For sure, 100%. I think I think it's quite unintuitive to raise or to min click something here. This is that we beat right now. I think ace 9 is not clicking it back, or some gut shots are not clicking it back. So I think, yeah, definitely go ahead and fold here.
Yeah, it's one of these spots where, like, if you ask yourself, how often has this happened to me? Like, how many times have I been clicked on a king turn in a 3-bet pot after I bet a second time? And even though it's a small bet, I think the answer is, like, almost never. So probably villain has, like, I'm going to do my psychic. King 9 of spades. Wait, we're not going to see it because you folded the river, but I'm just going to say I was right. He's got King 9 of spades, chat. That's what he has, guys. And then he jams the river and we fold. And like one deductive argument here is like there's player A and there's player B, right? And player A overbluffs the turn, but like probably also overbluffs the river, and then player B just underbluffs the turn, and then like we're dead. So against neither of them is call turn fold river really that great. Player C, who overbluffs the turn and gives up the river a lot, it's good to call turn fold river against him, but I don't think that's very many humans at all. I think that's like a tiny amount of people. Whoever has the heart to like min click queen jack here probably bluffs river a fair amount of the time with that same hand, right? And that's not to say we should call down. I just think we should get out that burning building sooner because it's a very underbluffed sort of line that you just never really see. It's so tempting to think like, man, I must be winning a lot because it's so hard for them to have a better hand. But then it's just like the cognitive frequency that they choose to bluff at there is just very low for most humans. So yeah. All right. If you can defend this one, I'm going to be impressed. You've managed to defend most of the hands that I pulled out because they looked a bit odd, and you've impressed me and convinced me. If you can do the same here, I'm going to be super, super impressed, right? So we have king 8 of clubs. We've called. We've gone 3-way. A fish has led for 5.34 big blinds, and we have raised to 14.26 big blinds. Let's pause at this juncture. The rest of the hand is very boring because we're getting in now, but let's pause at this juncture and do you want to try and defend this raise? Because I don't like it.
Yeah, I also don't like it anymore. I'm just trying to figure out why I did this in game. The most obvious reason for me now, I would say, is try to isolate the fish, but we are in great shape to keep the third guy in it as well. So and we don't want to build up the pot massively right now because at the moment we just have top pair.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yep. So there's no fold equity from better hands in the fish's range. Yeah. The only fold equity is really from hands we're absolutely dominating. Same for the button. We're not really too likely to make we might make the button fold like Jack 10 or something, but that's about it. We're not likely to make them fold many better hands. Both players can still have the nuts here, ace queen, etc. just call and see what develops, and no useful fold equity, basically a polarization mistake, right? Because your hand just
Yeah.
wants to play a smaller pot and it doesn't crave fold equity of any sort. So here there's probably just an unthought through line, like, oh, I'm going to isolate the Fisher. Like, one of these thoughts that's insufficient suddenly becomes sufficient, and then we end up making a mistake. It all worked out though, because we did hit the river and we did cooler the ace queen. But yeah, it's the sort of spot where fold equity is very low. Your hand is quite close to just being a draw. So play your hand in an implied odds way rather than a fold equity seeking way. This is like episode 1 of True EV on Carrot Corner, is along the same lines for any Carrot Corner subscribers out there. Are
Also,
you? Go
also
ahead.
good thing. Good things can happen if you just call. So villain 5 could call, I don't know, 6, 7 of club hits on the turn, and we stack both or something like this. So yeah, definitely not. I think this hand we don't want to play heads up right now. It's
Yeah,
just a good hand.
yeah, it's almost like protected pot syndrome, where it's like we have no fold equity against this player anyway, really.
Yeah.
Like the fold equity radar is very low. Therefore, we welcome the extra implied odds from someone else putting money in a sense, right? Like if we're behind here, we'd rather the button also came along with another made hand. We'd rather be drawing against 2 made hands with no fold equity than 1 made hand with no fold equity. So yeah, multi-way spots though, understudied, kind of under, misplayed thing where you've studied a lot of theory, you're CPS trained, it's not really an area you've devoted much of your time to, so you may see like more misfires there until you just get more experience.
Yeah.
Okay, King 9 of diamonds. We 3-bet and we are called. This is the last hand for today, guys. If you have enjoyed this content, let us know in the comments. Do like the video. And don't forget to check out the Carrot Poker School at Carrot Corner for way more poker content to do all of the theory and all of the mass data stuff that Kevin did. I've got him to this point in his game where he is raising the King 8 of clubs on this flop. No, I'm just kidding. That wasn't the Carrot Poker School that did that. It wasn't.
But this is the Carrot Poker School.
This is the Carrot Poker School. Losing this stack here, spoiler alert, if we lose a stack here, this is Carrot Poker School approved. Sometimes losing stacks is approved in CPS. All right, 3-bet, call, Jack 10, duck. B60, very CPS. Oh yes, the B60 here. Yes, it's optimal. Got that nerding out with the B60. Villain calls, 3 of hearts on the turn, double flush draw, barrel turn, unblocking the clubs, unblocking the hearts, blocking King Jack of diamonds. 9's already folded turn, probably not a negative blocker. Wow, what a bluff combo! Is there a better bluff combo in GTO world?
And we give up. Just kidding.
We follow through. Like a lion, like a true character, we follow through, and this is good. I think this is a great sort of example of just the types of hands you want to bluff on Broadway boards are the hands that unblock the draws and block the top pair, right? It's a very, very kind of easy pattern to get your head around once you've seen it. This isn't as good, by the way, probably as like King Queen of diamonds, which blocks even more top pair, for instance, and pocket queens if it did slow play. But it's still a very good bluff candidate, and it's very simple on this river. Villain fundamentally has 2 types of hand in his range. He has busted clubs, busted hearts in one camp, and then he has some sort of jack or nutted hand like 2 pair in the other camp. And you can't really do anything about the Jack 10, but you can block the Jack by having, and the 10, by having the right suits here, and the King and the 9, they block Jack 9, 10 9, King Jack, and King 10, pushing Villain more towards the busted draw. And yeah, I think you just need to be all in here, probably, with this particular combo on the river. You could make an argument that it's better to have, like, I don't know, the Ace 9 of diamonds, because you block Ace Jack, which is the most likely Jack to call, and stuff like that. You can nitpick here, but overall, you just want to avoid having like Ace of Hearts, Ace of Clubs here, King of Hearts, King of Clubs, and have the other big cards and bluff those. Yeah, and also, should we give... it didn't work, but should we give the audience one grade E secret? A very important grade E secret about 3-bet pots. How do you feel about barreling in 3-bet pots, tripling people in 3-bet pots, having done grade E? How do you feel about it generally?
It's only not only grade E, but also cash injection. To put it here. So yeah, this spot is overfolded by population, and yeah, in a solver they have to call. I think most racks find calls with Jack X here, but the solver always called Jack X here.
Yep.
And I think some people, especially rake, so not like I click call every time I hit a pair fish, but the fish who's thinking a bit, they might fold hands like Queen Jack here.
Yeah.
Or bad rakes fold hands like King Jack here.
Yeah.
And this is printing against them. So definitely go for the bluff, especially when you unblock all of these busted draws.
Yeah, so like the busted draws are just already, I mean, it's even better when you're out of position and they're in position, right? And they've actually got like small blind button. It's even better. We're giving away all the grade E secrets here because they arrive with more of their draws that they haven't jammed on turn. But here it's still really good. And yeah, the minute they start folding that Jack X, it's like the whole house of cards crumbles and they're now just folding like double as often as they should. Hugely important thing. No one is aggressive enough in 3-bet pots with bluffing. And look for spots, guys, where people actually have to call you with underpairs, call you with second pair. Like they do here, they have to call a 10 at some frequency here, right? Because otherwise they're just way overfolding. And yeah, I like the spot a lot. You've got the right hand for it, and you pulled the trigger. And this guy did find an okay call with Queen 10. It's gonna happen. I don't know. They probably want to have the Queen 10 of hearts here to call more so, or the Queen Jack of clubs, because they're going to unblock more of your natural bluffs like this. But whatever, this looks like a good call on and face value, and you know this is 100 NL. And
I mean, I also jam Ace Jack here, so it's fine if he calls Queen 10.
Yeah, absolutely. You're jamming. I mean, you can probably jam Ace Jack, Queens, Kings, Aces, Tens, Jack 10, the whole caboodle of stuff. So yeah, great stuff. I think you played really well in the session. I looked over some other hands that didn't feature today as well. Your game's improved a ton. The grade E stuff is clicking with the theory stuff. The hand analysis is clicking with the foundations, the laws of physics of poker that you've instilled from taking CPS. You've found a good site to play on. Your graph is going in the right direction because you're no longer playing unbeatable games like extra rake GG in Germany, which just sounds like, I don't know, you may as well just go outside and dig a hole in the garden arbitrarily for a while. You know, you may as well just go and like lift something to one place and then back to the other place all day and just like spend your time doing that. You know, it's one of those. So, and I'm not saying that every single GG game is unbeatable. I don't know. But like certainly when they're certainly not easy to beat. And then when you add that extra 1% rake, it's just like, oh, just don't do it. Anyone
and
else
also
in Germany?
a bit higher cap. So
higher cap, yeah. Higher
like...
cap, more BB per 100 and rake. Party seems to be a good solution for people in your situation then.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we bring this episode of Where Are They Now to a close?
No. This was a great session. Thank you. Also, thank you for the kind words. Appreciate it. Yeah.
No, it's great to give praise where it's deserved, and I love to see archetypal examples of people buying the content, entering the Discord, getting involved in the community, being involved in multiple parts of the community, and then kind of finally things are clicking and they're getting some better results after a lot of frustration. So this is the story, this is the reality of poker, and this is the kind of good story that we're seeing on screen right here. There is no miracle cure, you know, do this and you'll suddenly just crush by doing this one thing. It doesn't exist. But this is what it looks like when lots of things fall into place and a bit of variance comes along. I hope the scrap's going to keep going up, and we'll get you back on the channel or Twitch or whatever at some point in the future. Remember, guys, to take advantage of this opportunity to learn, to be part of the community, to join the Discord, just get any product from Carrot Corner and say hello to us in the Discord group. And we'll see you back here for another episode of Where Are They Now with a brand new student at some point in the future. Bye for now, guys.